Okay.
Harini, okay. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Om Good morning and welcome to the Sunday service. This morning we're going to do the metta meditation, few minutes. After the meditation, Reverend Kusala is going to give a Dhamma talk. After Dhamma talk, question and answer and chanting. Today, the meditation is going to lead Reverend Vinita. Now, time to practice. Now, time to practice loving kindness meditation. First, relax yourself, relax your body, relax your mind. In this thought, practice loving kindness. May I be well and happy, peaceful, and free from suffering. May no harm come to me. May no difficult come to me. May no problems come to me. May I always find fulfillment. May I also have patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in your life. Teachers, and all teachers of the Dharma be well and happy and peaceful. My parents, brothers, and sisters, friends, and the relatives be well, happy, and peaceful. May my enemies be well, happy, and peaceful. May all beings in the universe be well, happy, and peaceful. Practice loving kindness couple of minutes. When you sound the bell, open your eyes. Thank you, Vinita. Now it's time to start the Dhamma talk. Reverend Kusala is going to give a Dhamma talk today. I believe, Kusala, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay, here we go. I got an email from somebody who's a Facebook friend, and he said, "What's American Buddhism going to look like?" And I thought, that's really a good question. And maybe I can give some hints as to what it might look like in the future. Now, IBMC, International Buddhist Meditation Center, could have celebrated 50 years in existence, but we had a pandemic, so we didn't celebrate. Last week, they talked about Venerable Thich Thich Nhat, they talked about Venerable Karuna Dharma, and Venerable Havanpola Ratnasara as being three important people in the start and existence of IBMC. And that surely is the case. So I'm going to give you some personal perspective on myself and why I'm still here. So in 1979, I came to IBMC for the first time. Now, I never met Venerable Thich Thich Nhat, but I did meet Shinzen Young, who at the time was the vice abbot, and Reverend Karuna Dharma was the abbot. And I thought to myself, this is going to be a lot easier than I had expected, because Shinzen spoke Japanese, but he spoke English as a first language. Now, being an American like I am, I'm proud that I only speak one language. And that has served me well as long as I don't leave America. So when I got the email about American Buddhism, I thought to myself, well, number one, what is an American? What does an American look like? And because we're a melting pot, because we have come from all over the world and started this experiment called America, we look like everybody. And I think we have a cultural connection, but we also have a language connection, and we have rites and rituals, which gives us something in common. And so when we talk about American Buddhism, we're talking about a very diverse group. We also have two kinds of religion, basically, in America. We have the Catholics and we have the Christians. And since then, we've added a few more. But Buddhism is just like a little over 100 years old in America. So we're not quite sure what direction we're going to go in. Will it be monastic, or will we have a bunch of Dharma teachers and Buddhist ministers instead? Or will we have both? And I'm betting on both. I think we're going to have a very important place for Dharma teachers, an important place for monks, an important place for people who feel like they need to be Buddhist clergy, whether it be a minister or a pastor or something of that sort. So here we are in 2021. I've been living at IBMC for 26 years, and it's been a fascinating experience, to say the least. So I moved in 1993, and I have to tell you, we had some really odd residents in 1993. But I came from the outside, and I was on the outside looking in. Because I've been in for such a long time, when I look on the outside, I see a bunch of really strange people walking by IBMC. So my whole perspective has shifted a bit. So Venerable Thich Thich Nhat, I think, had the right idea. He said, Americans may not want to donate. They may not want to go on retreat. They may not want to meditate on a regular basis. But if Americans move into IBMC, more than likely they will pay their rent. And the rent has enabled us to exist for 50 years, 51 actually now, but 50 years, people paying rent. We're able to pay the mortgage and the insurance and do maintenance and et cetera, et cetera. So he was on the right track, I think. And then he wanted to introduce various forms of Buddhism to the American population. So over the years, we've had Tibetan Buddhist masters living and teaching at IBMC. We've had Theravada Buddhist masters living at IBMC. We've had Zen Buddhist masters teaching and living at IBMC. We've had a variety of Buddhist teachers living and working here in order to introduce the American public to Buddhism and its many forms. So do we have a preference? Is there one that stands out among the others? Well, I have to say that Vietnamese Buddhism, because the founder was a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, is probably the most important Buddhism, even though we don't have a Vietnamese Buddhist master or teacher living here anymore. But that was how it started. Venerable Thich Thich Nhat was teaching at UCLA. Some of his students wanted him to start a meditation center. This was the meditation center he started for Americans. And a couple blocks away, there's a wonderful Vietnamese temple that he started for the Vietnamese, realizing, I think, that the Americans aren't going to learn Vietnamese, and a lot of the Vietnamese aren't going to be scholars of English. So he kept it in the culture and he kept it in the language. And I think that made it much easier, especially for me, to get a handle on what Buddhism is all about. So from 1979 to 1993, I was coming on a regular basis. I did my first retreats at IBMC. I listened to Reverend Shinzen almost every week and was just fascinated by how he spoke and what he spoke about and how he looked at the world. And I can remember thinking to myself, I want to see the world the way he sees the world. Well, after all these years of practice, I see the world the way I see the world. And I guess I'm never going to see it in a way that isn't me, but that's okay. So in 1993, I decided to do ordination. Dr. Ratnasara said to me, well, why don't you think about ordination? He said, you know, you have a job, but it's not a great job. You have an apartment, but it's not a great apartment. You're not married, and you probably aren't going to think about marriage in the next couple of years, but have you thought about ordination? Have you thought about doing something that you really like to do as a way of living a life? Not work, but a lifestyle. And I thought to myself, yeah, you know, while I'm still young, I was in my 40s, and now, of course, it's I've gotten old, but in the 40s, I thought to myself, yeah, this might be my opportunity to try something that I really like, something that I'm really passionate about, to see if I can succeed, to see if I can make a go of it. So in 1994, we had a grand ordination, and we had a variety of people from all different forms of Buddhism. Some became ordained as a Dharma teacher. Some became ordained as a novice monk, myself, and some took full ordination. One of the most remarkable parts of that ordination for me was there was a woman and a husband and a daughter, and they all became ordained on that day. And they all went to different temples after their ordination. And I thought to myself, what a commitment from a whole family to be ordained and to become monastics and to live a life of a monastic. And so I learned a lot about why people get ordained. I learned a lot about why people feel the need, whether they're called or find it interesting, to get ordained. And as I took my ordination, I was given the job of being the residential manager. So Reverend Karuna said to me, Kusala, we want you to be part of our organization. You know, you're ordained now, and we're going to give you a little stipend every month so you can buy new socks and a t-shirt if you need it. And we're going to give you health insurance, and we're going to give you a room to stay in. So you won't have to ever go back out into the world and work at a regular job, but you'll be working for us. And what we need you to do is fill the rooms with residents, because that's how we exist. So off I went to find people to live at IBMC. Now, we had something called the RAC, Residential Action Committee. And when we found a prospective resident, they would be interviewed by me, and they would be interviewed by the RAC, Residential Action Committee. And what we wanted to find out, this is before we could do background checks, is what kind of person they were. Did they have enough money to pay their rent? Were they quiet and peaceful in their lifestyle? And most of the time, we did pretty good. But you know what? You never know who anybody is until you've lived with them a few months. And sometimes they just surprise the heck out of you. So we went and filled the rooms, and over the years we've been more full and less full, but we've always been able to meet our commitments, our financial commitments, and we continue to do that. We also had a variety of retreats, and we had classes every week from the people who were either ordained here or had something to teach, like yoga or meditation or Buddhist history, and all sorts of wonderful classes that were free or very inexpensive that people could drop in and take. And so what we tried to do was continue making Buddhism an American adventure, an American destination, that Americans would feel comfortable coming to IBMC and learning about Buddhism. And sometimes they converted, and sometimes they didn't, but they always had a better idea of what Buddhism was or could be by coming to IBMC. We even had members. We have a membership card that were given out to people who wanted to donate on a yearly basis. And we would send them a card, and they'd be official member of IBMC, which of course now is a collector's item. But it was a lot of fun to see people wanting to line up and be part of it, and also help out. You know, there was something called SAMU, which was spiritual work, which meant once a month or a couple times a month, we would gather at IBMC and we'd hand out the rakes and the lawnmowers, and we would clean up the place. And we did it as a community, and oftentimes after the cleaning, we would have a lunch. And it was a nice way to share and be connected and keep the place looking good. So you can imagine, after 50 years of being in Koreatown, how many times it's changed. And right now we have just building after building being constructed, and we have office buildings, and we have residential buildings, and we have traffic all the time. And it's gotten to be pretty popular in Koreatown. And yet our little, a new message, okay. And so our little community continues to exist, even with all the problems and challenges of COVID, changing community, no parking, it's just the stuff that goes on. So what's American Buddhism going to look like? Well, it's going to be a bunch of people practicing Buddhism. It's going to be people who prefer to sit sometimes rather than walk around, prefer to be silent rather than talkative. It's going to be something that people are going to be able to look at as a lifestyle rather than just a religion that's visited once a month or once a year or sometimes once a week. It'll be a lot of those kinds of things. It'll be just a regular religion. And if you've been aware of how many times Zen now is used to sell products, what you find is we've become sort of like a regular religion. We have Zen soap and Zen air freshener and Zen incense, and people are become very comfortable with the idea that Buddhism is here in America, and it's not a threat, and it enhances a life, and it's the kind of thing that is important to a lot of people. So it's respected, and throughout the world, it seems to be gaining popularity, and I'm not sure why, but ours is not to ask, ours is just to practice. And so as I reflect on Buddhism in America, and especially IBMC, I see this little center has done quite a job over the years at keeping Buddhism alive in its own little way. Now, I was the residential manager for quite a while, but then I got sidetracked and got into community service. And I started working with, or volunteering. I never got paid, but that's the best part. I started volunteering for UCLA and Garden Grove Police Department and Central Juvenile Hall, and on for 20 years. I was a volunteer, and what allowed me to be a volunteer was the fact that I was being supported by IBMC. And IBMC gave me the flexibility to go out into the community and be of service and not have to be paid. But oftentimes I got a certificate thanking me for my service. So I've got a whole wall of certificates, but which fun to look at, reminds me of what I used to do. And it's even better sometimes than being paid, because if you're a paid employee, you are accountable. If you're a volunteer, you get to leave anytime you want. It doesn't change a thing. So I was able to bring certain perspectives to the table that other people couldn't, because they were being paid and I wasn't. So as I look back now, next month I'll be 72, and it's been quite a ride. I've learned a lot, but especially in this last year, Buddhism has really helped me reflect on the importance of silence and introspection and watching the world change in an oh so different way from the way it was just a couple years ago. That we have a lot of people who are just on the edge mentally, who have difficulties dealing with no job, no place to live, no food to take home, just the whole deal. It's just such a different place to live in now. And Buddhism, I think, has allowed people who practice Buddhism to feel more comfortable in the chaos, to understand that everything's impermanent, that nothing stays the same very long. Everything has an expiration date. And if you get too attached to the way you think things should be, or the way things are right now, it's just a matter of time until you can be really disappointed, because everything will be different, and especially you. So as I look in the mirror, I don't see the same person I was in my 40s or my 20s or my teens, but somehow this person just keeps moving right along, practicing, reading, sharing, posting, and life is full, and life is good. And I think I'll stop there. I think that I covered what I wanted to cover, but I would love to get a couple questions to hear what you heard me say, and maybe what I can answer and add clarity to your question. So let me turn it over to the audience. I see all the faces looking at me on my screen. Who would like to? Oh, Jeannie, how are you, Jeannie?
Good. How are you? Yeah, that's interesting, because this morning we were talking about what was going, Hideki and I, what was going to happen to Buddhism in America. So, and I want to say I came to your ordination. I don't know if you remember.
I do remember.
Okay.
I do.
So, I was born Zen Buddhist, but when we went to the church, it was just kind of a social thing among Japanese people. You had carnivals and bazaars and things like that, but it almost seems like I've noticed that Japanese Americans are becoming more Christian, whereas more Caucasian people means Caucasian people are becoming, there's more Buddhists. And what I've noticed is when I go to retreats like Jack Cornfield and Sharon Salzberg, they have their monasteries and the Shasta Abbey, and they're really devoted into studying the Pali, the sutras, whereas the Japanese Americans are just still Buddhists, still just more, it's a community thing. It's really different. You don't study it like white people do. You know, how can I say it? It seems like a lot of the Buddhist people that are into the forefront are from Jewish background. And that's very interesting to me. And I'm wondering why this is happening. But I know in World War II, the first people that were incarcerated and put in jails were the Buddhist monks and Buddhist teachers. So I'm wondering, did that affect our Japanese American community, or what happened? How come more? And this is the way it's going, really. I see it. I've seen it, and I see it.
Well, I think you're adding a cultural perspective. I think, you know, each country, Japanese, Thai, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Tibet, they all have their own way of looking at Buddhism, their own way of practicing Buddhism. But we can't deny that there are certain community aspects that are important to the Buddhists. For instance, Thich Thich Nhat Hanh, when we had the boat people in the mid-70s come over here and they were at Camp Pendleton, the monks and Dharma teachers would gather at IBMC and travel down to Camp Pendleton to let them know that Buddhism was in America and was in California, and that they had an option to the other religions. They could keep their own. And Thich Thich Nhat Hanh helped a lot of Vietnamese boat people or refugees find places to live and things to do to make a living. So the community part is important. The spiritual part, if you call it the spiritual part, what I have found with Americans, whether white or other, is they're really concerned about, you know, the bolts and screws and nails of what makes Buddhism work. How is it put together? How can I use it to have a better life? And I think that might be because of the converts. Any person that converts to another religion seems to be more into the dynamics of the religion than perhaps the community aspects, because they're not taking it for granted. But when you're born in for instance, in Japan, I've never been there, but you know, you've had Buddhism for a really long time. You've had Zen for a really long time. And I think people just take it for granted, you know, the way a lot of Americans take Christianity for granted, and they celebrate Easter, and the Jewish people might celebrate Passover, but it's just what they do, and it's not necessarily how they live their life. So Buddhism has always been, to me, calling me to live in a different way, and especially to think in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And the community aspects like Samu, cleaning up, retreats, having potluck lunches and things like that, which Reverend Karuna just loved that part of it. She really liked the idea of community and getting together. And there were other people here who just prefer to meditate and do retreats, and that was it, hoping for enlightenment sooner or later. So you can't really be too hard, I think, on the Japanese, because it's just, that's how it has evolved over the years and centuries, actually. And so, but you have the opportunity living in LA to taste every form of Buddhism.
Mhm.
It's all here. So one might be, I prefer the community of this, and I prefer the meditation of this, and I prefer the Dharma of this. And you're so lucky to be here because that's all accessible to you. You know,
Yes,
I sometimes feel sorry for people like living in the Midwest or Oklahoma. Nothing against Oklahoma, but they may not have a Dharma center or yoga studio within a couple 100 miles. You know, so they're pretty much trapped online. They're going to get most of their information online. But then how do you know if the online person or community is valid in the way they describe Buddhism or the Dharma? You know, is it credible? Are they credible? So we've got a ways to go. But one day I think America will be sort of like, you know, the Japanese people are today. It'll be, let's get together and, you know, talk about this or talk about that or celebrate spring or have the new year. And the Dharma may fall aside except for the clergy, the monks, the Dharma teacher, and the Dharma ministers, because their job is to keep that part of it alive, the philosophy and the practice alive. And all the other stuff helps keep people together. I remember asking Dr. Ratnasara, you know, why do they have all these really weird stories in Buddhism of the Buddha flying here and going there? And do people really believe that, you know? And he said, well, that's really important because those are the stories that bring people and keep people in Buddhism. So the stories are like the bark of the tree. And when you get deeper into the tree and get to the core of the tree, then you find the philosophy and the Dharma and what's it all about. But a lot of people never get to the core. They're satisfied with the bark. They enjoy the stories, and that's good enough. And then a small percentage go all the way and become scholars. And so I chose the middle path. I'm not going to be a scholar. And I appreciate the bark of the tree. So there's some place in the middle that's comfortable for me that I'm working with. But thanks for that, Jeannie. How is Hideki doing? Is he feeling better?
Oh yeah, he's only so good. He's working and couldn't get here on time to listen, and he loves to come to your talk.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad to hear that because Hideki likes to work.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he's well enough to do that. That's good. All right. Hey, Joe, how you doing? Haven't seen you for a while. Anybody else have something they'd like to comment on or share with
Rick,
us?
you can ask your question. Rick.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Everyone. Nice to see everyone here. Yes, I have a question. Giving your talk about what Buddhism looks like in America, and me, we like to label things, and since I've been studying, looking into Buddhism, I tend not to label things as much. But I tend to think, people ask me, "Are you a Buddhist?" You know, I am a being here, you know, I have beliefs, and there's a lot about Buddhism that I like. And then I'm thinking, well, what if I take the vows? Would that make me more serious? And then, okay, I already think I do the 5 precepts, and, you know, I try to do the best I can. And maybe for me, that kind of symbolizes the American way, you know. So my thing is like, well, what makes me a Buddhist or not a Buddhist? And do I even have to worry about that? And that's something, I don't know, for me, typically kind of American as, well, maybe taking the vows is a good thing. Maybe it's not. I don't know. That's my comment, kind of a question.
Okay, well, when you take your vows, you get a certificate suitable for framing. That might be worth it just for that. So when somebody says, are you a Buddhist? That's a great question, because then you have to say, well, what is a Buddhist? You know, is it someone that follows the teachings of the Buddha? I would say, yeah, that's really a good place to start. It's someone who tries to understand what the Buddha was saying. It's someone who follows the 5 precepts. That really is the basis of all Buddhist practice, is following the 5 precepts. You know, not to kill, not to steal, no sexual misconduct, not to lie, not to consume intoxicants, or not to consume intoxicants to the point of intoxication. which is how we say it here. So that gives you sort of a safety rope, if you will, that if you find yourself going in a particular direction, that you're able to pull the rope and prevent yourself from going too far in this direction or that direction. And so being a Buddhist is a disciplined way of living your life, but not in a negative way. It's disciplined in, there are a few things I really want to avoid in this life, you know, and if I can practice Buddhism and it helps me avoid those things, like the 5 precepts, then my life will be better and my karma will be better and my rebirth will be better as well. Now, being a Buddhist doesn't mean you have to believe in rebirth, but being a Buddhist, I have to say the Dalai Lama had the best answer to what is Buddhism. And he said, my religion is a religion of kindness. So maybe in the broad stroke, being a Buddhist means you always try to be kind. It doesn't mean you understand the philosophy 100%. It doesn't mean you need that certificate on the wall, but you're trying to be kind. And why is that? Because Buddhism is about why we suffer and how to end our suffering. And if we're kind to others and kind to ourselves, we will suffer less. So I guess being a Buddhist is just a person that tries to suffer less and helps others suffer less as well. But we have wonderful models and paradigms that we can follow. And we have this identity that we can embrace and say, yes, I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Buddhist. It won't get you a cup of coffee, but it may allow you to feel just a little bit better about the path you've chosen and the way you're living your life. And then, ironically, Jim, the whole idea in being a Buddhist is eventually you leave that behind too.
Right.
That's when the freedom starts, when you don't have to be anything. But I think in order to be nothing, you have to be something first.
Right. People used to ask me when I go to things, say, what's your name? Well, I don't like to give my name as Rick because that's not really who I am. But everybody wants a label.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just a relativity thing that we just use for convenience.
So did you make up a good name that you can give people? Not yet.
I like the name human being because we are a being and we're a human. So it's a mixture of the two. So,
well, you know what you could do? You could say, my name's HB.
Yes.
I go by my initials.
Maybe a letter. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Joe.
You brought up the Dalai Lama, and I was actually thinking of the Dalai Lama when you were talking about American Buddhism. Does American Buddhism or Vietnamese Buddhism or you take a position on the Dalai Lama's statements that he's not going to come back due to the kind of the political machinations of China and Tibet? Do you think that's going to have an impact on American Buddhism? Because he's kind of been a pretty big figure for Americans, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when a person says, a Buddhist, especially at his level, says, I'm not coming back, generally when I hear that, it means that he's really working on nirvana. So he doesn't have to come back. But in Buddhism, we've had 28 Buddhas so far. Siddhartha Gautama is the current Buddhist that we're following his teachings. And Maitreya Buddha will be the 29th Buddha. And so there's always somebody taking the place of the last one. So the Dalai Lama may not come back because he achieves full enlightenment or nirvana, but somebody else will be here. And they will continue the Dharma wheel turning. And we will have teachers, and we will have Dharma, and we will have practice. And it goes on. The thing about politics, I've been watching a lot of ancient Rome and on YouTube. And they have this like 3-dimension animation, and you sort of go into all these places. And, these guys that ran Rome, man, they were just killed and slaughtered and assassinated and died early. And I'm thinking, geez, politics is a tough way to go, you know? And so I much prefer religion over politics. So religion, they kill them too. So it's just fascinating that in order to be free from all that stuff, we can't be too committed one way or the other. And I know people will say, if you're not committed politically, you're sitting on the fence, and saying nothing is as bad as saying something that's wrong. But from a Buddhist perspective, I think sometimes not encouraging the suffering, not participating in the suffering, might be just a better way to go. Can we say things that are kind and create less suffering, even in the political arena? You know, very hard to do. Everybody has a side they've taken, a commitment they've made, a particular way of looking at stuff. And people say to me, well, what do you think about this politician or that politician? I go, I don't think anything. You know, they come and go in a flash. They're elected. And if they say the wrong thing or say the right thing, or the politics change, they're out. And somebody else takes their place. So it's an evolutionary process, but every political mechanism will eventually end and stop and not work any longer. And every religion eventually will stop and end and not work any longer. And of course, all of us, we're going to stop long before those systems stop. You know, we've got, you know, a timer, 70, 75, 80, if we're lucky, a couple years to go in my case. And you go, so what are you going to do with your last couple years, Kusala? Well, I'm going to read some books. Why would you want to read? Well, because it's good. And I'm going to practice meditation, and I'm going to eat some chocolate cookies. Is that how you're going to end your last few years on earth? I thought to myself, you know what? That's a pretty good way to do it. You know, and so I look at this stuff and I go, yeah, the Dalai Lama says this and he's not going to do that, but he's given the world a whole lot of good stuff. And he has made Buddhism acceptable and respected because of how he's lived his life. So even if he never comes back, he's done so much in this lifetime that we could never repay him. We could never thank him enough. So that's my spiel, Joe. You know, politics, religion, Buddhism. Yeah, because Buddhism is a way to live your life, how to practice, how to be kind, how to feed animals who are hungry, you know. Good stuff. Thanks. Is that Sarah? Hey, Sarah. Good. Good to see you guys. Thanks for tuning in today.
Really nice to see you. Really nice.
Thank you.
Been a
And
while.
how are the kids doing? The kids are good?
They're doing okay. They're
Not
getting
big.
by.
Good. And they're always getting bigger, aren't they? And then they always get smarter too.
Yeah.
You know? That's the
Much
scary part.
smarter.
It is scary.
Yeah. Good. Well, good to see you. Thank you. Vincent, you got a question? Yeah? No? Okay.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. How
Thank
are you?
Kusala. Yeah, really good. It sort of reminds me of, I guess I sort of reflected to a previous Dharma talk where we were talking about mindfulness and how that's sort of become, you know, I guess a hot button topic. And, you know, there's mindfulness to, you know, live a more peaceful life, to, you know, and even mindfulness to become a better sniper, and, you know, all these different things. And it sort of reminded me of that. And I sort of concur with Jeannie, what she said about, I have noticed some Buddhist organizations. I live in Orange County, and we have one up here, and it tends to be, it almost has the flavor of Christianity. And I was wondering, with respect to Vietnamese Buddhism, I might be wrong in my my understanding, but their practice of the Pure Land Sutra and how that is, you know, and I guess the object is to eventually, you know, ascend to the Pure Land with a Mate Buddha. And so that's where I see, where genie, that's what that reminded me of. But that's really all I have to say.
Okay, and that's the Pure Land Buddhism is also found in Japanese Buddhism as well. It's often misunderstood, because what the idea is to have faith, vow, and devotion to Amitabha Buddha, to be invited to go to his Pure Land, his heaven, where everything speaks the Dharma. Even the trees speak the Dharma. And once you get there, you're guaranteed to achieve nirvana. So you actually get reborn out of the Pure Land into nirvana. Now, in my early days, I felt more, Zen and sitting and militaristic, and I'm going to plow through it, and but in my later years, Pure Land heaven sounds really good. You relax, everything is just the way it's supposed to be. The Dharma is available 24/7. Everybody's friendly and kind. I'm thinking, that would be a nice place to go for a few lifetimes, just before you make the final jump to nirvana. So I changed my mind a lot after reading some of the sutras. But when you first get into Pure Land Buddhism, it almost looks Christian. It almost has that sort of God concept with heaven and that kind of thing. And you go, wow. But doesn't that say something about humans more than it says about Buddhism? That humans perhaps need something like that, because it just doesn't seem fair that we're born, we live, and we die, and that's it. It just seems, and it's such a short period of time. Like a mayfly has a day, and their life is gone. And you go, wow, one day. What do you do in one day to make life worth living? And what do you do in 70 years to make life worth living? And how many people have gone to war and died when they're young and never had a chance to fully live their life because they were protecting something that was going to change anyway? So I look at this stuff and I'm going, yeah, it's really interesting how a lot of religions sort of came to the same place and said, we need to give people someplace to go. But Buddhism said, which I think is really cool, that that's not it. That heaven is not it. It's a great place to go. And if you make it there, you're going to be really happy. But there's one more place. That's called nirvana. So every Buddhist, whether it be Pure Land or Zen or Theravada or Tibetan, ultimately their final goal is nirvana. The unborn, the undying, and no suffering. So yeah, thank you, Vincent. Thank you. Reverend Kushanti, question? Comment?
Thank you. No question. I mean, coming from a Catholic background, it was just basically the social thing. I mean, you went Sunday, you listened to a very boring sermon, and then you said hello to people, and that was it. And as a convert, you're quite right. You want to know why you're on this path. So you got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so far we don't have bingo, but that could change.
That, sure.
You never know. And
I vote for bingo.
You vote for bingo? All right. That'd be a good community activity. Reverend Shraddha, you're going to be speaking about Reverend Karuna in your talk? Oh, your mute is on.
Oh, yes, a little bit next week.
Good. I'm looking forward to hearing that. She was quite a person.
Yes, she really was.
Unpredictable to say the least.
Yes.
But was committed to Buddhism in so many ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Thank you. Good. Selvin, anything you'd like to add? You've been studying Buddhism for a while.
Well, I don't think I really have been studying it. I just want to comment that maybe the reason why we like to study Buddhism is because we're looking for loopholes. You know, that the intoxicant ones is a favorite one that everybody tries to get out of it. So that's just my comment on that.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? I see. Yeah, Jeannie.
Okay.
You have to take your mute off, Jeannie. There you go.
Okay, that when you say nirvana, my understanding is it's nothing. I mean, you're past Pure Land. You're just formless. You're.
Okay.
I don't know.
Let me pull some Zen on you, okay, Jeannie?
Okay, all right.
Nothing is everything. So, as the Zen master might say.
Right.
So when you're talking about nothing, you're really describing everything. So the idea with nirvana, it's the end of suffering. It's the end of all future rebirths as well. You'll never have to be born and die again. And even if you don't believe in rebirths, being born and dying in this just single lifetime is difficult. And then the hardest part is in between life and death, the life we live. That's really hard. A lot of people suffer every day. And so we're really lucky that Buddhism says there's a place you never have to suffer. Now, you might not recognize all your relatives in nirvana, but that might not be a bad thing. So nirvana is beyond description. You know, everything we could say about it wouldn't be it. Everything we think about it is not it at all. But it's if you think of it as a place you never have to suffer again and never have to walk on another planet again and deal with birth and death and change, constant compromise in everything you do. You know, it's just it's not a bad thing.
Okay.
So if somebody says, what is it? Do the Zen thing. Don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't.
There you go. Okay. You're not lying. That's right. You know. Good.
All right, Kusala. Thank you
Oh,
again for
okay.
everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to chant the page 4 and page 10. Namo tassa bhagavato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to slay them all. Deluding passions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them all. Dharma gates are limitless. I vow to study them all. Buddha's way is supreme. I vow to attain it. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shall all grieve, and the sick find health to live. Om Mani Padme. Thank you again for everybody. Thank you all the monks, and thank you all the members. And next Sunday, I believe 28 is Sadha going to give a Dhamma talk. Again, thank you again for everybody. By the power of Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, you all be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.